What's up, guys? JT Anime and Nerd here, bringing you all that nerdy goodness. Today, we're gonna go over my spoiler review for episodes 4 and 5 of the One Piece live action series. Before we start, I really want to give a shout out and hand to Ichiro Oda himself, as he has just confirmed in a video on YouTube that the One Piece live action series has been officially renewed and is getting a season 2. I know it'll take a while, but I can't wait for the Straw Hat crew to get to the Grand Line and begin their new adventure. With all that out of the way, let's get into the review. To begin with episode 4, the mystery behind Kuro and the Black Cat pirates are finally unveiled. A group of marines led by Kobe heed the words of Usop, but Usop's reputation as a liar, as well as Helmeppo's stubborn pride, only keep making Usop look more like a liar. This aspect of the episode really hits deep down on when Kaya, Usopp's best friend, doesn't even believe him either when he tries to tell her that her butler Kuro, who she knows as Clawhador, is not the person she always thought he was. I gotta say, even in the anime, I did not like Kaya in this moment. Because despite Usopp's lies over the years, this was the kind of specific thing I wouldn't even expect him to joke about. Usopp's a pretty good liar, but I've never found him to be a smart Art 1 until after the time skip, but that's just my opinion. On the sidelines, we also see Zorro struggle to get out of the well that Bucci and Sham put him in, leading us into learning his backstory via flashbacks. If I may, I gotta say, pertaining to Queena's accident, even in the anime, I'm not too completely convinced that Queena died by falling down some stairs unless she was pushed, which I also gotta mention that the live action doesn't specifically get into, but in the anime it says as she fell down some stairs and died. But considering she was so agile and quick with a sword, I'm highly convinced she was pushed. This has been on my mind forever, and when we get to a certain character in season 2, I'll get more into it. But back on track. Zoro's flashbacks were both emotional and pretty incredible, as it shows one of the many things that pushes a pirate forward, their dreams. Actually really love the dynamic between young Zorro and Quina as well. It still makes me wonder what it would have been like if Quina was still alive, or even in Zorro's place. Seriously though, I'm not convinced it was an accident. Anyone who agrees or disagrees with me, feel free to give me your thoughts on that in the comments below. The episode then continues to a kind of horror aspect, as Kuro begins to hunt down Usab, Kaya, and Nami in the house like a killer from an 80s slasher film. The scene where the trio is in the walls, as well as the scene in the abandoned room, is incredibly creepy and nerve-wracking, to say the least. When Kaya was about to attack Kuro, I literally kept yelling at the screen for her not to, just like many people do in horror movies. It just goes to show how incredibly badass Aya can be, as well as how incredibly creative if the team was with this live action series. Who knew? Meanwhile, the whole time Luffy's knocked out from the poisoned soup he ate earlier, to the point where Kuro gave him up to Kobe, who began to question Kuro at the back at the mansion. I really gotta say that I love it when Zoro just punched out Helmeppo. Helmeppo was really getting on my nerves in this episode, so props to that. I also really love the scene where Luffy tells Kobe that he knows that he has a job to do, but of course warns him not to get in his way. It really kind of shows the dynamic between them as frenemies, being that despite being a pirate, Luffy still respects Kobe and his position, especially when he knows they could inevitably fight each other in the future. The biggest aspect of this episode, of course, is the fight scenes. The battle between Zoro against Bucci and Sham was really incredible. The choreography was outstanding. But to me, Zoro's fight sadly pales in comparison to Luffy's fight with Kuro. If I did have to nitpick, however, I would have loved a more detailed fight between Luffy and Kuro, as Kuro had super speed, but stopped using it after getting punched once by Luffy. I honestly think that could have been a good way for Luffy to use more strategy in timing his punches whenever Kuro used his super speed and tried to use a sneak attack. But still, the fight was amazing, and the Gum Gum Bell was awesome. After the battle with Kuro, Kaya gives the Going Merry ship to Luffy and his crew. But the most shocking part out this scene was Kaya kissing Usop goodbye. One Piece has always shied away from romance, especially because it's a shonen series, excluding a certain scene with Sanji and the time skip. But in this scene, Kaya and Usop full blown kiss, and I am just ecstatic about it. The episode then ends with Garp finally catching up to the Straw Hat crew and Luffy casually revealing that Garp is his grandfather. I gotta say that episode 4 is an episode I will never forget, and so in terms of scaling this episode, I give it an 8 out of 10. Now, when it comes to episode 5, it's a pretty memorable episode. It starts off. It starts where it left off from episode 4, with Garp attacking the Straw Hat Pirates. I really love how disorganized the Straw Hats are against Garp, as Usopp loses cannonballs, Zorro has no sense of direction, and Luffy hardly knows what to do as a captain, leaving Nami to pretty much clean up the mess. I also love how Luffy learns his Gum Gum Balloon mid-fight for the first time, showing us that Luffy hasn't even scratched the surface on what he can do with his Devil Fruit powers yet. Uh, I also even love how they have Garp do a signature cannonball throw to bring down the Straw Hat crew. The Straw Hats then continue on by escaping Garp and ending up at none other than Baratier, the best restaurant in the Seven Seas. Now I gotta say, when it comes to the reveal of Garp being Luffy's grandfather, I really do think the others, mainly Nami, truly did overreact, as even I don't see how Luffy's relation to Garp has any merit on their situation. I don't even count on it as a trust issue because to me everyone's entitled to their privacy when it comes to their family unless an explanation is necessary. In my opinion, an explanation to them wasn't necessary, so I honestly think Nami was reading too much into that. Though I admit, I do get where Nami's coming from a bit. Now, of course, when it comes to my favorite part about this episode, it's the introduction to Sanji. If I had a favorite Straw Hat crew member besides Luffy, it would be Sanji, especially in this version of the story. I also really love his relationship with Zeph. Despite the hateful banter, they really show how much they care about each other as an adoptive father and son. Now, when it comes to the marine side of the story, I found it to be a bit underwhelming. However, the best part about their side of the story in this episode is the introduction to Dracula Mihawk, who is renamed Dracul Mihawk in this live action version of the story. Mihawk's introduction actually marks the biggest turning point in the source material, as we also get the short introduction to the villain of the Baratier arc, at least in the anime, Don Krieg, who is killed off by Mihawk in a matter of minutes. This decision actually has me the most conflicted. At one point, you want to divert from the source material so you can make this new version of the story more unique, while at the same time, I feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity by killing off Don Krieg so early, as I would have loved to see Luffy's fight against him. But at least we still got Sanji feeding one of Krieg's crew members like in the anime, which I will get to again soon. I also really love Luffy's attitude when he tries to give an IOU for the bill at Baratier. It really shows how arrogant Luffy can be when it comes to finances, and this ultimately making him the new chore boy of Baratier via Seth's orders. This episode also kind of goes all over the place for a bit, with Kobe having to question Garp about the government's involvement with pirates via the Seven Warlords of the Sea, Luffy encouraging Sanji to follow his dream, as well as Nami trying to ditch the Straw Hats due to her trust issues. To start off, I do like Kobe's moral dilemma, as everything about being a Marine begins to unravel after learning the harsh truth about the corruption within the government by aligning with pirates, ergo the Seven Warlords of the Sea. Back with Luffy at Baratier, he and Sanji begin to bond over their dreams, as Luffy tries to encourage Sanji to stand up to Zeph for not letting him cook in the restaurant. After that comes the part where one of Don Krieg's men enters the Baratier hungry, with Sanji feeding him in response. This pirate tries to warn Luffy to forget about the One Piece, which of course, come on, it's Luffy we're talking about, he ain't gonna give up anything. Meanwhile, Nami tries to barter a boat back to Cocoa Village behind the backs of her friends, to which she actually changes her mind about due to her care for them later on in the story. Zorro in particular, for a reason we'll get into soon. There's even this little drinking game that Nami and Zorro play, in order to learn more about each other, which to me was kind of a wholesome moment. But all of that gets interrupted when Dracula Mihawk shows up, leading Zorro to challenge him to a duel. Now, I get why Nami and Usab would panic and try to talk Zorro out of it, but I honestly admire Luffy for not wanting to interfere here with Zorro's dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. I also like how there's a very serious disagreement between the crew, who, as it's not, we don't see much of that in One Piece. It almost felt like how it did in the anime when Usopp opposed against replacing the Going Merry at the Water 7 arc in the anime. But of course, nothing in this episode compares to the big duel between Zorro and Mihawk, who I forgot to mention is nicknamed Hawkeye, no doubt because of his eyes, which I really hope have a purpose in the anime/manga. I feel like they have a Sharingan build-up type thing going on. The beginning of the fight is fantastic with Hawkeye using his dagger before his main sword, Yoru. It was also awesome to see Zorro use his 3000 Worlds technique even without calling its name out. It was during this fight that Nami had decided to change her mind about leaving in the crew so soon because she wanted it to make sure Zorro was okay. At the end of the day, I give this episode a 9 out of 10, mainly because of the duel, Sanji, and Mihawk, especially with that ending. They mimic the iconic end to Zorro and Mihawk's duel fantastically. It felt like right out of the manga, with Zorro getting slashed by Mihawk, and of course, or Zorro vowing that he'll never lose again and until he finally defeats Dracula Mihawk. If you guys like this review, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and put down in the comment section below on what you guys thought about this episode. With all that said and done, I'm JT Anime, and I'll check you guys later.